This video we're going to be covering all of the TTKs when it comes to the LMGs inside Modern Warfare 2's multiplayer. This is an exciting video. So getting straight into it here, what we have is a spreadsheet with all of the LMG TTKs. I want to give a quick shout out to the sim.gg website because that is where we got this data from. And as you can see here, we've got all the damage profiles for each of the LMGs along with its chest shot TTKs, which is basically the kind of TTK we can get right now, especially from the beginning of the game. Once we actually get more data, we'll get the mix shot locations and stuff like that. But this will give you a rough idea of how the guns will actually feel in game. Now, the main thing we're going to focus on when it comes to LMGs is the long range TTK. So mainly that second TTK range here. Now, there is a couple of LMGs that do have a third damage drop off, but again, you kind of want to avoid these guns as much as possible if you can, because what that means is it's going to do less damage over range. Now, these guns probably have the least amount of recoil as well, having said that, but like I said, you want to avoid that if you can. So what we're going to do is take a look at the second damage range, get the fastest TTK on top here, and as you can see, the RAAL LMG is an absolute monster in this game. To be fair, it actually has only 2 damage drop-offs, and the damage of this gun is absolutely insane. Basically, you just need to land like 2 to 3 bullets with a full auto long-range rifle, and this gun absolutely fries, to be honest. And the recoil is actually not too hard to manage, to be perfectly honest. If you do have the correct build, you can actually get a relatively decent control on this gun. Now, obviously, you will move a lot slower with some of these LMGs, so just keep that in mind. But I do think this might be a really good option for Warzone, as if you are holding down certain lanes, then you actually don't really need to move around too much and you can get some easy kills. So as you can see here, the damage is insane on this gun. Obviously, long range TTK is absolutely the best. Now, obviously, we've got the ICARUS here and the HCR, but both of them have a third damage drop off. Whereas if you look at something like the SAKIN, it will be a bit more consistent for you. But also, I do want to point out the RPK's damage profile is actually very decent, to be honest. And I know it has a couple of damage drop-offs, but the damage doesn't really drop off all that much. As you can see, 38, 36, 35, 33. For chest shot, that's not a lot of like kind of decreases in damage over range. And as you can see, the TTK is actually super consistent, so 200 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds, and a kind of similar idea with the RAPP as well. So I do think kind of all the LMGs in terms of actual TTK numbers are pretty solid. So the next quick thing I actually want to show you here is a recoil chart. This is a quick recoil chart. We didn't spend too much time on this at all. But what we did was we took every base weapon when it comes to LMGs into a game, fired against a wall at about 15 meters, I would say, and we took these kind of recoil charts. And as you can see here, we've got the ICARUS, the RAAL, the RPK, the RAPP, the SAKIN, and the HCR. Now, as you can see here, when it comes to the ICARUS, it's actually a pretty easy gun to control. It goes upwards to the right. A lot of these LMGs do have a lot of horizontal bounce, and that is where obviously your attachments are going to need to come in to help control these weapons. But when it comes to the ICARUS and the RAAL, both of these guns are very accurate, and considering how good the TTK is on the RAAL LMG, if you have a good bunch of attachments on this, it's going to be a super accurate high damage weapon, which is something you definitely want to use. When it comes to the RPK, you can see that is relatively easy to manage as well, pretty much straight upwards. If you get a couple of attachments with that horizontal recoil, again, it'll be easy to use. Same with the RAPP as well, very easy to use. The SAKIN's probably going to be one of the worst ones in terms of recoil because it goes upwards and to the left, plus it has a lot of side-to-side bounce, as you can see here. And the HCR has a lot of vertical recoil, so the ones on the right, the very far right, are probably going to be the two that you want to avoid here. So let's give some context about which guns you should actually be using. We've got a tier list here with long range, close range, kind of ones that can deal damage in both ranges, and then guns that you shouldn't really use. Now, when it comes to LMGs, you should only be using these guns for long range. They're not aggressive enough to use at close range, especially with their ADS times and their movement speeds, so definitely stay away from those. When it comes to the ICARUS, you could definitely use this at long range. In terms of recoil, as you've seen, it's very easy to control. It does have 3 damage drop-offs, so that's something you do want to keep in mind, but in terms of control, is one of the better guns. The RAAL LMG is probably the best LMG in the game right now. The damage profile is absolutely insane, not to mention that also it has relatively easy control as well, so once you add on a couple of attachments on there, it'll definitely be a solid gun. When it comes to the RAPP, once again, I do think this is a solid choice. In terms of movement, actually, this is one that actually has probably one of the better movement speeds out of all the LMGs, so again, I wouldn't really put it as a close range weapon, but it definitely has good amount of movement. And then the RPK as well, I definitely think it's a solid choice. I actually really like the feel of the RPK overall. I think even though its TTK is not the fastest at range, it's super consistent, and honestly the recoil on this gun is actually very easy to manage. If you put a couple of horizontal recoil control attachments on there, it makes this gun feel absolutely amazing. And then when it comes to the SAKIN and the HCR, those are probably the two that I would recommend not using, just because the control on the weapons are not that great, but on top of that, the TTKs are not great either. So there we have it. Those are the TTKs for all of the LMGs inside Modern Warfare 2. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching.